I opened the door and the darkness hit me like a physical weight. No lights, no movement, no sound except the faint hum of the heating system. My heart tightened in my chest as I dropped my bag onto the floor and called out, "Emily?" No answer. Just the empty echo of my own voice bouncing back at me. I flicked on the switch, praying the power had gone out, but nothing. The apartment was swallowed in shadows, and in that darkness, a sense of abandonment settled over me more deeply than any winter chill could. I noticed the note first, perched neatly on the kitchen counter. My stomach sank. The handwriting was deliberate, almost clinical. "We're in the Bahamas. She's your burden. My mother-in-law." The words were a hammer blow, and I felt every ounce of them reverberate through my chest. Burden. That's what they called her. What they had called me. What they'd made me feel for years. I sank onto the edge of the couch, running a hand through my hair, trying to process the silence. Emily, my daughter, wasn't crying. I had expected tears, a wail that would fracture the night, but there was nothing. That thought alone made my chest ache with something I couldn't name. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate. I turned, and there she was, standing in the doorway, clutching something to her chest. Her eyes met mine, and I realized she had been holding back something. Some secret she wasn't ready to share with the world, but she had shared it with me. "Dad, they don't know what I found," she said, her voice calm, almost unnervingly composed for a child of 7. I swallowed hard. My mind raced. What had she found? A gift? A note? Something dangerous? Every scenario twisted my gut tighter. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms, but I hesitated, sensing the weight of her discovery. She was carrying something I had no part in, yet it would change both our lives. I moved closer, careful, cautious. "Show me," I whispered, my voice catching on the word. My hands shook slightly, betraying the calm I tried to maintain. She held out a small, locked briefcase, worn at the edges but sturdy. My name was engraved in careful, deliberate letters on its surface. I blinked, trying to reconcile the image in front of me. My name. On a briefcase. That I had never seen before. My heart pounded as I realized the implications. This wasn't just a toy or a random keepsake. This was something serious, something deliberate. Something that had been hidden from me. I knelt in front of her, the dim light casting shadows over her small face. "Emily, how did you find this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged. "It was in the attic, behind a box of old decorations. I didn't tell anyone. I knew you should see it first." I exhaled slowly, the weight of realization settling in. I had stumbled into a quiet, personal betrayal, an omission, a secret kept from me, and my daughter had just delivered it into my hands. And somehow, I knew instinctively, this would change everything. I reached for the briefcase, feeling its cold metal under my fingertips. My mind raced. Questions tumbled over each other. Why hadn't my family told me? What was inside? Was it money, papers, something tied to their legacy? And more urgently, what would I do with it now that I held the truth in my hands? Emily watched me, patient, calm, but her eyes mirrored the curiosity and nervous excitement I felt. She had shared something precious and potentially dangerous with me, and I couldn't ignore the responsibility that came with it. I had failed before, I knew that. I had left things unsaid, choices unmade, and consequences unmeasured. But this, I could see now, was a moment where I could right some of those wrongs. I closed my eyes briefly and leaned back, letting the silence of the apartment fill me. The note on the counter mocked me softly, reminding me of the abandonment and cold judgment I had endured. But the briefcase in my hands was different. It offered opportunity, revelation, and perhaps a path to something greater than I had dared imagine. I opened it slightly, careful not to force anything. The lock resisted, a test of patience and intention. I thought about the years I had spent trying to prove myself, to my ex, to my in-laws, to myself. All the moments where I had come up short, all the times I had questioned my worth as a father, a man, a provider. And here it was, a tangible answer, a challenge, and a gift all in one. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of timing far beyond my understanding. Emily shifted beside me, her small hand brushing mine. "Dad, you're not mad, are you?" she asked softly. I shook my head, the corners of my lips twitching into a weak smile. "No, kiddo. Not mad. Just surprised. And terrified," I thought, though I didn't say it aloud. Terrified of the responsibility, terrified of what this would mean, terrified of failing her again. I finally looked at her and took a deep breath. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together," I said. Her eyes lit up with a quiet trust, and I felt something shift within me. A spark of clarity, a thread of resolve. This was more than a discovery. This was the beginning of a journey, a test of courage, patience, and ultimately, identity. The night stretched around us, the darkness outside the apartment's windows echoing the uncertainty of our future. But inside, a faint warmth had begun to build, a sense of connection and purpose. I couldn't yet see the full path ahead, couldn't know the challenges, the revelations, the heartbreaks or triumphs that awaited. But I knew, without doubt, that this moment, the quiet revelation in a dark apartment, with my daughter at my side, would define everything that came after. I closed the briefcase gently, the engraved letters catching the faint light. My daughter watched, her trust unbroken. I realized, with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, that this was my chance, not just to protect her, but to step into the man I needed to become. Every failure, every heartbreak, every abandonment had led me to this point. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. I looked at Emily and smiled, fully this time. "We have a lot to figure out," I said, and she nodded, a quiet confidence in her eyes that matched my own newfound resolve. The darkness around us remained, but inside, something had shifted. The journey had begun. I stared at the note again, trying to read it beyond the words. The paper felt heavier than it was, as if it carried every judgment, every disappointment, every calculated slight my ex-wife and her mother had ever leveled at me. "We're in the Bahamas. She's your burden." Simple words, sterile, almost polite. Yet in that cold politeness, I could feel the magnitude of abandonment, the quiet dismissal of years of love and care. My chest ached in a way that was physical, sharp, and unyielding. Emily sat across from me, her small knees tucked beneath her chin. I watched her study me with the calm patience that only a child with too much wisdom can have. She didn't cry. She didn't wail. She simply looked at me and said nothing, but I could feel the weight of her understanding. She knew. She felt it too. And yet, there was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet determination that mirrored something I hadn't seen in myself for years. I crumpled the note and tossed it on the counter, feeling a surge of helpless anger. The idea that my own family, or at least the people who were supposed to support me, could dismiss both my daughter and me with a single, thoughtless message was unbearable. And yet, I was tethered to the reality in front of me. Emily was here, alone, and the only person who could act in this moment was me. "Dad," she said quietly, holding out the briefcase she had discovered the night before. "I think this is important." I reached for it cautiously, as though touching it could trigger some invisible trap. My mind raced, replaying the last few years of my life in rapid succession. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment I had questioned whether I was enough. Enough as a father. Enough as a man. Enough to deserve the happiness I'd glimpsed but never fully held. I opened the briefcase slowly. The lock resisted briefly, then clicked open with an almost ceremonial finality. Inside, I found documents, letters, and carefully itemized sheets that spelled out an inheritance I hadn't dared imagine. My grandfather had left me not just wealth but a company, a legacy that had been intentionally withheld from me for 2 decades. My hands trembled as I leafed through the pages, each line a revelation, each number a testament to secrets kept and doors closed until now. I looked at Emily and saw her anticipation, her trust, and my chest tightened again. This wasn't just about money or property, it was about validation, acknowledgement, and the opportunity to step into a role I had been denied for far too long. The weight of it pressed down on me, but instead of despair, there was a spark of clarity. I could feel it in the small tightening of my chest, in the way my fingers lingered over the documents. This was a turning point. I sat down heavily, letting the reality settle. "Emily, this changes everything," I said, more to myself than to her. She tilted her head, her wide eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and cautious excitement. What do we do now?" Her question was simple, but the implications were enormous. We were standing on the edge of a precipice, and every choice from here would carry consequences. My mind raced through legal considerations, family confrontations, and the responsibilities that came with wealth and authority. And yet, beneath it all, I felt a rare clarity. I had an opportunity not just to reclaim what was owed to me, but to define the kind of man I wanted to be, for myself and for my daughter. I closed the briefcase slowly and met her gaze. "We take it one step at a time," I said. "Carefully, thoughtfully, but together." Emily smiled faintly, the kind of smile that can melt fear in even the heaviest of hearts. "Together," she repeated. The silence that followed was different from the emptiness of the dark apartment or the sting of the note. It was filled with possibility, with cautious hope. And yet, the tension was undeniable. This inheritance, this secret my family had kept, was not just a gift, it was a test. A question posed to both of us. Would we rise to meet it, or would the weight of what was hidden crush us under its enormity? I thought about my ex-wife and the millions she had chosen to embrace. I thought about the lives she seemed to have carefully curated, leaving my daughter and me behind. And I realized that this was the first moment in a long time where I held the power, not for revenge, not to compete, but to redefine our lives on our terms. Emily's hand found mine, small and reassuring, grounding me. "Dad," she whispered, "we can do this." Her words, simple and innocent, carried a weight far greater than anything written in legal documents or calculated in financial spreadsheets. They reminded me that the path forward wasn't just about reclaiming a fortune or asserting my rights. It was about trust, responsibility, and the bond between father and daughter, the one thing that had never been negotiable, never been for sale. I leaned back, letting the moment stretch, absorbing the enormity of what had just been revealed. Every betrayal, every abandonment, every moment of self-doubt seemed to converge into this singular point of clarity. And for the first time in years, I felt ready, not just to act, but to lead, to protect, and to reclaim the dignity that had been quietly denied to me. We spent the rest of the evening going over the contents of the briefcase, piece by piece, understanding what it meant and what responsibilities came with it. The night stretched long and quiet around us, but for the first time, the darkness didn't feel oppressive. It was a backdrop for the beginnings of something profound. A father and daughter, alone but united, standing on the threshold of a new life. As Emily finally curled up on the couch, clutching a small blanket, I closed the briefcase and placed it on the table. The weight of its contents was undeniable, but it was no longer a burden. It was a path forward. And as I looked out the darkened windows, the first flicker of resolve ignited within me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever confrontations with my past or my ex-wife, we would face them together. This was the moment our lives pivoted, not because the world had given us anything, but because we had found a way to take it into our own hands. The night remained silent, yet in that silence, I felt the stirring of a plan, a strategy, and an unspoken promise. To protect my daughter, reclaim our lives, and rise above the shadows that had haunted us for so long. And for the first time, I felt a quiet certainty that whatever came next, we would not just survive, we would thrive. The morning light barely filtered through the blinds when I realized I hadn't slept at all. My eyes were heavy, my mind buzzing with the weight of what Emily and I had uncovered. The briefcase, the inheritance, the letters, it was all real, all tangible, and all completely beyond anything I had imagined. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small metal clasp of the case that still gleamed in the dim dawn light, and wondered how my life had become this tangled mix of secrets, responsibility, and sudden opportunity. Emily, ever patient, sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through a few of the documents I had let her peek at the night before. Her curiosity was insatiable, but controlled. She didn't fully grasp the magnitude of what we had in our hands, yet there was a spark in her that mirrored my own excitement, tempered by caution. This was new territory for both of us, a secret we were navigating together, and in that alone, there was a sense of intimacy I hadn't felt in years. I opened the briefcase fully now, carefully sorting the letters and documents. There were financial statements, handwritten notes, legal papers, an intricate map of a fortune and a family legacy I had never known. I ran my hands over each page, feeling both the weight of responsibility and a strange sense of validation. My grandfather had left this to me, and for decades, my own family had kept it hidden. Perhaps to protect me? Or perhaps because they doubted I could handle it. Either way, the betrayal stung. Emily tugged gently at my sleeve. "Dad, what's this one?" she asked, holding up a small envelope. I leaned closer, reading the handwriting. My grandfather's script. Even the paper smelled old, almost sacred. Inside was a note, addressed not just to me but to the man I was meant to become. It was a message of guidance, encouragement, and expectation, something that seemed to reach across time to find me in this very moment. My throat tightened as I read it aloud to her. "Use this wisely. Not for revenge, not for pride, but to build a life you can be proud of." Her small hand pressed mine, grounding me. I realized then that this discovery wasn't about money, it was about legacy, identity, and the opportunity to finally step into a life I had only glimpsed in dreams. Every failure, every heartbreak, every moment of self-doubt came rushing back, but I didn't feel defeated this time. I felt a cautious determination. The documents revealed more than just wealth. They outlined a company my grandfather had built, a complex web of businesses that had been waiting for a successor. I wasn't just inheriting money, I was inheriting responsibility, strategy, and the chance to create something enduring. The enormity of it threatened to overwhelm me, yet I couldn't turn away. I had always been one to rise to challenges, and this was the ultimate test. Emily tilted her head, watching me carefully. "Dad, are we supposed to do this? Are we ready?" I looked at her, a lump forming in my throat. "We'll have to be. Together." Her trust and faith in me were unspoken yet palpable. In her eyes, I saw not just hope but a challenge, to rise to the occasion, to be the father she deserved, and the man my grandfather believed I could become. Hours passed as we pored over the contents of the briefcase, piecing together the clues and directives left behind. Each document opened a door, each letter revealed another layer of the man my grandfather was, and by extension, the man I could become. There was fear in the responsibility, yes, but also a flicker of excitement, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I could feel my identity beginning to solidify, not in the shadows of those who had abandoned me, but in the light of the legacy I was entrusted with. At one point, I leaned back, staring at Emily as she quietly organized a stack of papers. Her calm, thoughtful presence reminded me why this mattered more than the money or the business. It was about connection, trust, and the chance to redefine our lives together. My failures in the past felt distant now, like echoes of lessons I had learned and was ready to apply. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice, guiding me. Courage, integrity, responsibility. Use them wisely. The briefcase was more than a container of wealth. It was a map, a test, and a challenge rolled into one. And I was beginning to understand that the journey it demanded was as important as the reward it promised. Emily looked up at me, her small eyes reflecting both curiosity and pride. "I think we can do this. I think we can be ready." I smiled, a real, unguarded smile that reached deep into my chest. "We will," I said. "Step by step. Together." The day stretched on, the sun climbing higher, spilling light across the room and the papers before us. Every detail mattered, every choice felt weighty, and yet there was a thrill in it. A recognition that life had handed me a chance to reclaim control, to rise above the shadows of abandonment, and to forge a path I could be proud of. By evening, the room was quiet except for the faint rustle of papers and the occasional hum of the city outside. Emily leaned against me, tired but content. I closed the briefcase gently, understanding that this was just the beginning. The discovery had changed everything, yes, but it also demanded action, responsibility, and courage. And I was ready to step into it, to be the man, the father, and the protector that both she and I needed. As I looked out the window, the city lights beginning to twinkle against the dusk, I felt a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in years. This discovery wasn't just a twist of fate, it was a call to arms, a moment that would define our lives. And for the first time, I believed that together, Emily and I could face whatever challenges lay ahead and come out stronger on the other side. The briefcase sat between us, a silent sentinel of secrets and opportunity. And in that quiet evening, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: our lives would never be the same again. The quiet of the apartment felt heavier than ever that morning. The briefcase sat open between Emily and me, its contents spilling secrets and possibilities onto the coffee table. I could almost feel my grandfather's presence, guiding me, testing me, demanding I see the weight of what had been hidden for 20 years. Each paper, each letter, each carefully catalogued sheet told me the story of a fortune, a company, a life that had been deliberately kept from me. And now it was mine, or at least it could be, if I had the courage to claim it. Emily perched on the edge of the sofa, her eyes wide as I began to piece the puzzle together. This wasn't just money, wasn't just property or a company. It was a blueprint for a life I hadn't dared to imagine. My grandfather had left instructions, advice, and guidance woven through the documents, and the more I read, the more I realized the enormity of the opportunity and the responsibility. For decades, my family had kept this hidden, and now it was as if fate had finally given me a chance to step into the man I was meant to be. I picked up a folder labeled Legacy and began to read. The handwriting was precise, almost formal, but underneath it, I could sense the warmth, the pride, the expectation. My grandfather had trusted me, despite the years of absence and doubt. My chest tightened as I realized that this was more than inheritance. It was validation, recognition, and a chance to right the wrongs of the past. Emily tugged gently at my sleeve. "Dad, what does this all mean?" I looked at her, feeling the weight of my own disbelief mirrored in her small face. "It means we've been given a chance. A real chance," I said slowly, choosing my words with care. "Not just for wealth, but for something bigger. Responsibility. A legacy. A chance to do things right." Her eyes widened. "For us." "For us," I confirmed. "And it starts here, with understanding what's been hidden, what's been kept from us, and how we're going to move forward." I spent hours reviewing the papers, reading aloud parts to Emily when she wanted to hear, explaining things in simple terms she could understand. She listened, nodding thoughtfully, occasionally asking questions that revealed an intelligence and maturity beyond her years. It struck me how much strength she had, how much resilience, and I realized that this discovery was not just transforming my life, it was shaping hers as well. Among the letters was one addressed specifically to me, in my grandfather's unmistakable script. My hands trembled as I opened it, and the words hit me like a thunderclap. "This fortune is more than money. It is the test of your character. Use it with integrity, courage, and love. Protect those who rely on you, and you will find your true purpose." I exhaled, letting the weight sink in. Every challenge I had faced in my career, every heartbreak in my relationships, every moment of doubt about my abilities as a father, it all converged in that single point. This was more than an inheritance. It was a responsibility I could not ignore, a path I had to walk with integrity. Emily reached for my hand. "Dad, we can do this together, right?" Her trust bolstered me in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about money or legacy, it was about the bond between us, the chance to rebuild a life on our terms. I nodded firmly. "Yes, together. Step by step." The revelation also brought clarity about my ex-wife and the choices she had made. The money she had chosen, the life she had embraced, it suddenly seemed trivial compared to the opportunity that had been quietly waiting for me all along. Anger flared briefly, but it was tempered by a deeper understanding. This wasn't about revenge or competition. It was about reclaiming my life and proving, most importantly to myself, that I could rise to the challenge. We continued to sort through the briefcase, uncovering the layers of responsibility and potential. Business documents, legal contracts, letters of guidance, they all formed a roadmap for what could be, and each one demanded careful consideration. The reality was daunting, but beneath it all, a spark of exhilaration began to grow. This was a turning point, a moment that would define the next chapter of both our lives. As the day faded into evening, I closed the folder with deliberate care. Emily leaned against me, her presence a quiet reminder of why all this mattered. The secret revealed was not just wealth. It was a challenge, a call to action, and a chance to step fully into the man my grandfather had believed I could become. I looked out the window, the city lights beginning to twinkle like distant stars. The path forward wasn't clear, and there were risks, unknowns, and inevitable confrontations ahead. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of direction, of purpose, and of connection with my daughter that transcended any previous fear or doubt. "This is just the beginning," I whispered, more to myself than to her. Emily's small voice echoed back with quiet confidence. "The beginning of us, Dad." And in that moment, with the briefcase closed but the knowledge of its contents alive between us, I knew she was right. Everything had changed and there was no turning back. But for the first time, I felt ready to face it all, to rise above the shadows, and to embrace the man I was always meant to be. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds, but instead of the usual warmth, it felt like a spotlight on the magnitude of what lay ahead. The briefcase had been closed and set aside, yet its presence lingered like an unspoken challenge. Emily and I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, notes, and the slow realization that our lives were no longer ours in the ordinary sense. They had been irrevocably altered. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of responsibility settle into my shoulders. This wasn't just about a fortune or a company. It was about decisions, strategy, and courage. The kind of courage that didn't come from reckless action, but from careful, deliberate steps. The first step was understanding what we had, and the second was determining how to use it. Emily shuffled a stack of documents toward me. Her small fingers traced the edge of a folder labeled Investments. She had absorbed so much in such a short time, and I realized how capable she was, how her intelligence and insight mirrored the quiet strength she had shown from the moment we discovered the briefcase. "Dad," she said, her voice steady, "we can do this. But we need a plan. Right?" I nodded, feeling a surge of pride mixed with anxiety. "Yes, we need a plan. A careful one. Something that protects us, builds us, and ensures we don't make mistakes we can't take back." I spread the documents across the table, categorizing them: legal papers, business contracts, financial statements, and letters of guidance. Each piece was a clue, a piece of a puzzle my grandfather had left behind. The more I studied them, the more I understood the magnitude of the responsibility. This was more than wealth. It was a test of character, judgment, and resilience. We began to outline our approach. First, understanding the company, its assets, its liabilities, and its operations. Second, assessing the investments and legal obligations. Third, deciding which areas demanded immediate attention and which could wait. Every step required caution, yet the opportunity for growth and transformation was immense. Emily leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What about Mom? If she doesn't know any of this?" I hesitated. The thought of confronting my ex-wife, of revealing what had been hidden for so long, was daunting. But I realized that our plan had to account for her, not for revenge, but for clarity and resolution. Secrets had kept us weak, transparency would give us strength. I looked at her, seeing not just a child, but a partner in this journey. "We'll address that later. For now, our focus is on understanding what we have and how we move forward. We can't let fear dictate our actions." Hours passed as we dissected every document, every line, every detail. I explained to Emily the importance of each, and she absorbed it like a sponge, offering insights and questions that made me reconsider my assumptions. It was astonishing to see her growth in real time, and I realized that this journey wasn't just about reclaiming my life, it was about shaping hers too. As evening fell, the apartment felt alive with purpose. The note from my ex-wife, the abandoned home, the darkness, they were all shadows now, overshadowed by the light of possibility. Emily and I had a plan, tentative but clear, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of control over my life. I leaned back, letting the realization settle in. This was no longer just about survival or coping with loss. It was about strategy, empowerment, and reclaiming agency. We had discovered secrets, understood their implications, and now we were ready to act. Emily reached across the table, her small hand resting on mine. "I'm ready. Are you?" I squeezed her hand, a quiet reassurance passing between us. "I am. More than ever. We'll take this one step at a time, and we'll do it together." The city lights began to twinkle outside our window, and in that moment, the possibilities seemed endless. We had a plan, a purpose, and each other. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and revelations yet to come, but for the first time, I felt a sense of unwavering resolve. Whatever obstacles awaited, Emily and I were ready to face them. This was the beginning of our transformation, the first deliberate step toward the life we were always meant to claim. And in that quiet evening, with the briefcase closed but its secrets alive in our minds, I understood that the true journey was just beginning. Together, we would navigate the complexities, uncover the truths, and embrace the legacy that had been waiting for us all along. The day I had been dreading arrived with a quiet intensity. Sitting across from my ex-wife in the cafe, I could feel every heartbeat echoing in my chest. Emily was at home, trusting me to handle what I had avoided for years, the confrontation that had been simmering beneath the surface, a mixture of resentment, betrayal, and unspoken truths. I had rehearsed every possible scenario, every response, but now, faced with her presence, all those rehearsals seemed inadequate. She smiled, oblivious to the tension radiating from me. "It's good to see you," she said, her voice casual, almost too light, masking whatever guilt or awareness she might have had. My stomach churned. Seeing her living her perfect life, a new husband, a luxury I could barely comprehend, while I had been left with the shadows of our past, ignited something raw inside me. But beneath the anger, there was a deeper purpose driving me now. I placed the briefcase gently on the table between us, a silent statement of everything I had discovered and reclaimed. She raised an eyebrow, curiosity mixing with mild annoyance. "What's that?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. I took a slow breath, steadying my voice. "This is my grandfather's legacy. My family kept it hidden from me for 20 years. And it's mine now." The words hung in the air, heavy, charged, undeniable. Her face shifted, flickers of surprise and confusion crossing her features. I could almost see the gears turning, trying to process a truth she had never considered. The life she had built, the wealth she had flaunted, the superiority she believed she held, all of it suddenly seemed smaller, diminished in the shadow of what I now possessed. "You had this all along?" she stammered, disbelief threading her tone. "Yes," I said firmly. "But it's not about the money. It's about responsibility, integrity, and the chance to do things right. Something I haven't had before. Something you chose to overlook when you abandoned us." Her eyes narrowed, defensive, but I pressed on. "Emily found it. She trusted me with it. And I intend to honor that trust, to step into the life I was always meant to lead. Not for revenge, not for pride, but for my daughter and for myself." There was silence for a long moment. The briefcase sat between us like a monument, a reminder of choices, secrets, and the power of what had been withheld. She didn't argue, didn't attempt to diminish the moment. Perhaps she realized the shift in the balance of power, or perhaps she saw the resolve in my eyes that hadn't existed before. I wasn't the same man she had left behind. I was different, stronger, more grounded, aware of my own worth, and unwilling to be diminished. "I didn't know," she finally said, almost a whisper, but her words lacked conviction. It wasn't regret I heard, it was surprise. And that was enough. Enough to know that the dynamic had changed, that the playing field was no longer skewed. I closed the briefcase with deliberate care, the metallic click a punctuation mark to the confrontation. "You don't need to know everything," I said, voice steady, controlled. "But understand this. Whatever path we take from here, it's mine to choose. Emily and I decide our future. And nothing you do will change that." She looked at me, a mixture of indignation and acknowledgement in her expression. I could almost see her recalculating, weighing her assumptions, realizing that the man she had underestimated was no longer the same. And I knew, in that moment, that the confrontation had served its purpose, not to humiliate or punish, but to assert a truth that could no longer be ignored. I stood, gathering my coat and the briefcase, feeling the shift within me. This confrontation, long feared, had not been about anger or revenge. It had been about recognition of my own power, my agency, and my worth. I had faced the past, acknowledged the betrayal, and emerged unbroken, stronger, and clearer than before. Walking out of the cafe, I felt the city air fill my lungs with new purpose. The confrontation had ended, but the journey was far from over. Emily's trust, my newfound inheritance, and the responsibilities they entailed were waiting, demanding action, foresight, and courage. And for the first time, I felt ready to meet it all head-on. As I walked home, I realized that this was more than a victory over an ex-wife or over circumstances. It was a victory over doubt, fear, and the limitations I had placed on myself. The confrontation had shifted everything, revealing not just the truth about my inheritance, but the truth about who I could become, and the man I needed to be for my daughter and for the legacy that had been entrusted to me. The morning air was crisp as I stepped out into the city, briefcase in hand, a sense of purpose propelling me forward that I hadn't felt in years. The confrontation with my ex-wife was behind me, but its echoes lingered, reminders of the life I had endured and the strength I had discovered within myself. This wasn't just about wealth or legacy anymore. It was about transformation, empowerment, and finally stepping fully into the man I was meant to be. Emily's laughter filled the apartment as I returned, her small presence grounding me in the reality that mattered most. I had spent weeks meticulously studying the documents, planning our next steps, and the more I acted, the more confident I became. Every decision, every call, every email was deliberate, a reflection of the clarity and resolve I now carried. I opened the briefcase and reviewed the notes once more, confirming priorities. The company needed leadership, investments required oversight, and legal obligations demanded attention. But beneath the logistics was something more profound, the realization that I had reclaimed agency over my life. I was no longer defined by abandonment, betrayal, or limitations others had placed on me. I was the architect of my future. The first order of business was rebuilding the company my grandfather had entrusted to me. Meetings with attorneys, consultants, and key stakeholders followed, and I approached each interaction with confidence and authority I had never possessed before. It wasn't arrogance, it was grounded knowledge and purpose, the culmination of everything I had endured and learned. The response from those I encountered was immediate: respect, attention, and acknowledgement of the man I had become. Emily observed silently, occasionally asking questions that reminded me of how far she had come alongside me. Her trust was unwavering, and it fueled my own determination. This wasn't just a rise for me, it was a rise for us, a reclamation of dignity, agency, and the life we deserved. At one point, I paused in my office, looking at the skyline of the city stretching endlessly before me. The city that once felt cold and indifferent now seemed full of possibility. The weight of the past, the losses, the doubts, they had been transformed into momentum, pushing me toward growth and empowerment. I realized that the briefcase, the inheritance, and the confrontation had not simply changed our circumstances, they had catalyzed a profound shift in identity. Emily tugged gently at my sleeve. "Dad, we're really doing this, aren't we?" I smiled, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Yes, we are. And every step we take together. This is our life, our legacy, our future." The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, I felt the transformation deepen. Decisions that once paralyzed me now came with clarity and purpose. Relationships with colleagues strengthened, business ventures flourished, and the once hidden fortune began to fulfill its potential, not just as wealth, but as a tool for empowerment and positive impact. One evening, as Emily and I reviewed our progress, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here: the note, the briefcase, the confrontation. Each moment had been a catalyst, a test, and a lesson in resilience, courage, and trust. And through it all, I realized that the true measure of success wasn't the wealth we had uncovered, but the growth we had achieved as individuals and as a family. I looked at Emily, her small hands organizing documents with precision and curiosity, and I felt a deep sense of pride. She had grown alongside me, developing insight, confidence, and strength. This journey had been as much hers as it was mine, and the bond we shared had been fortified by every challenge we had faced. As I closed the briefcase for the night, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. The rise wasn't just about external accomplishments or financial gains, it was about reclaiming identity, agency, and purpose. It was about transforming pain and betrayal into empowerment and fear into courage. And most importantly, it was about creating a life where Emily and I could thrive, independent of the shadows of the past. I stood by the window watching the city lights shimmer, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. The rise had not been easy, nor had it been without struggle, but the journey had proven that resilience, clarity, and trust, especially in oneself and in those we love, could transform the impossible into reality. "Dad," Emily whispered, resting her head on my shoulder, "we did it." I smiled, holding her close. "Yes, Emily. We did. And this is just the beginning." Together, we looked out over the city, the future vast and full of possibility, the lessons of the past firmly in our grasp, and the promise of growth and fulfillment shining brighter than ever before. The morning sun filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over the apartment. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm and certainty. The journey from discovery to empowerment had been long, challenging, and transformative, but Emily and I had emerged stronger, closer, and ready to embrace the life that had been waiting for us all along. I sat at the kitchen table, the briefcase open one final time. Its contents had been meticulously reviewed, understood, and acted upon. The company was stabilized, investments were thriving, and the legal matters had been resolved. But beyond all that, the most important transformation had taken place within me. I had reclaimed my identity, my agency, and my purpose. Emily sat across from me, her small hands arranging documents as if she were running the operation herself. She looked up, eyes shining. "Dad, we did it. We really did it." I smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond pride. "Yes, Emily. We did. And it wasn't just about the money or the company. It was about us, about trust, resilience, and stepping into who we were meant to be. The lessons of the past, the abandonment, the betrayal, the fear, had been transformed into strength. The confrontation with my ex-wife, the discovery of the hidden inheritance, and the painstaking work to build a plan had all led to this moment. I realized that the true legacy was not the fortune itself, but the growth, empowerment, and bond we had forged along the way. I closed the briefcase gently, feeling a sense of completion. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, one that we would write together, informed by experience, strengthened by challenge, and guided by integrity. Walking through the apartment, I reflected on the incredible journey. Each decision, each risk, each moment of courage had brought us here. The fortune was no longer a secret. It was a tool, a responsibility, and a testament to the life lessons passed down from my grandfather. He had believed in me, trusted me, and through that trust, I had found my own strength. Emily reached for my hand, her grip firm yet gentle. "Dad, what now?" I looked at her, the weight of our journey settling into a steady confidence. "Now we live. We build, we grow, and we make the choices that will define our lives, together. The legacy isn't just money. It's who we are, the people we become, and the future we create." We stepped out into the city, the streets alive with possibility. Each step we took was deliberate, guided by experience, wisdom, and a profound understanding of our own worth. I could feel the transformation in every fiber of my being. The man I was yesterday no longer existed. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace every challenge that came our way. As we walked, I reflected on how far we had come, the darkness we had faced, the secrets we had uncovered, and the courage it had taken to rise above it all. The inheritance was never just about money, it was a catalyst for growth, a teacher of resilience, and a reminder that we were capable of more than we had ever imagined. Emily skipped ahead, laughing, and I followed, feeling a sense of joy and freedom I hadn't known in years. The briefcase and its contents had served their purpose. They had revealed the path, tested our strength, and now it was up to us to continue the journey with clarity, courage, and heart. We reached a quiet park, the city skyline behind us, and I let myself pause, taking in the view. The legacy I had inherited was more than financial. It was emotional, relational, and personal. I had discovered the man I was meant to be, not through the wealth itself, but through the responsibility, the challenges, and the trust placed in me. Emily leaned against me, small and warm, her eyes full of admiration and love. "I'm proud of you." I hugged her tightly, feeling a swell of emotion that was equal parts relief, pride, and hope. "I'm proud of us," I whispered. "This is our life, our legacy, and we'll shape it together." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park, but inside me, a light burned brighter than ever. The journey had tested us, transformed us, and now it had brought us to a place of empowerment, clarity, and connection. The legacy wasn't just a fortune hidden in a briefcase. It was the life we had built, the strength we had discovered, and the bond we would carry forward, unbroken and unstoppable.